Flying. The Golden Knight announced to the rest of the dwarves that he would teach them the spirit of a knight. Light told the rest of the dwarves to stand down, but they didn't believe that the young boy had any power against them since they were over level 200. The boy told Nimumu not to kill them, as the dwarf bandits realized the woman was right behind them before she swiftly knocked the men out. Light kneeled down to ask if the parent and child were okay while they just stared in bewilderment and awe, asking who their group was. After getting patched up, the family allowed the three of them to ride in the carriage after saving their lives. The father asked them if they were famous adventurers, but Light admitted that their group was going to register as adventurers for the first time once they reached August and rank up as fast as possible. After some time on the road, the group had finally reached the Dwarf Kingdom and were dropped off at the entrance. The man told Light that he had an inn that he ran that was mainly for humans in the case Light would ever need it, to which the boy thanked him and they quickly bid their goodbyes and entered the city. Gold and Nimumu admired the place as it was their first time seeing a city on the surface, and the three of them continued to make their way to the guild. Finally, they arrived and stared at the large building of the Dagas Guild. Entering through the doors, there were people of all races seen all around the building, either chatting with one another or finding jobs for themselves, seemingly livelier than the city streets. Light told the two that they should finish their registrations right away. However, Nimumu was not satisfied with the rank that the person at the desk gave Light. The girl didn't care for her own or Gold's rank, but felt offended by an F rank being given to Light, despite that rank being the one given to every person registering as an adventurer. Nimumu did not care for the logistics and slammed her hands on the counter, demanding that the person at the desk would make Light into a triple S rank, until the boy himself told her that he didn't mind starting from F, and apologized to the person at the desk for Nimumu's behavior. They went outside after registering, and Nimumu was on the floor in a defeat, feeling bad after making Light apologize for her actions. Before the group had went off to find an inn, but not just any inn. They went to the inn that was owned by the person that they had saved earlier in the day, Carnal's Inn. The three of them were immediately greeted by the father and said that he would show them the best hospitality that he could. Carnal was interrupted by Light, saying that he had three selfish requests while they were to stay there. The first was to stay for 1 month. The second was to get the highest floor all to themselves, and the third was for not even one staff member to go up while they were there. Light pulled out a bag filled with 300 gold coins and asked if it was enough, and insisted that Carnal think of it more as a gift than a payment. The man thought for a moment before bowing and accepting the requests, guiding the three up to the highest floor. After arriving and finally being left alone, Light took out some cards to use on the room they were in to make it silent from the outside, as well as nullify any outside magic used and be able to detect people around. Gold asked about the money only for the boy to explain that the money was, in fact, real, and he had obtained it from their comrades acting as merchants on the surface. He didn't want to use counterfeit money at this specific inn, and they would get trouble if it was used anyway. Light could also make infinitely more money from his gacha skill, but he didn't want to destroy the economic balance of society. Nimumu jumped into the conversation and tried to tell him that, no matter how strong he was, the possibility of something happening wasn't zero, and she tried to suggest sending more people from the abyss. The boy shot her a cold look and cut her off, asking if she was trying to rob him of his revenge, a menacing aura hovering around him. The girl kneeled on the ground and apologized for her behavior, starting to tear up as her body shivered in fear. Gold started to laugh heartily as he told Nimumu that Light was capable of achieving things with his own hands. Light took a break and comforted the girl, apologizing for lashing out at her and scaring her, but she agreed that it was her fault and wanted to display her loyalty once again. The boy sat on a chair as the girl took off his shoe and kissed his toe, a means of displaying a loyal slave, which everyone else in the abyss requested to do, even though Light himself didn't really like it and saw it as embarrassing. Gold broke the weird moment and teased the girl for what she was doing, but the boy let the two of them know that they were going to prioritize going into the dungeon the next day until Ares' preparations were complete. Light shined on the land as morning came, and people were crowding around the land nearby the dungeon. Markets lined the sides, selling provisions, food, potions, weapons, everything that an adventurer could need. And this was just the entrance to the dungeon, the three of them admiring the scene around them. Light looked over to the people gathering to walk through a large gate, seemingly entering in order, and Gold noticed that it seemed to be only humans, beastmen, and dwarves. The boy explained that it was because elves were not welcome around the area since elves and dwarves never liked each other. People around them started to stare at the group, wondering who they were since they stood out so much from the others. But Light decided to see it as a positive thing. He felt a little embarrassed with the formation that they were in since Nimumu was close behind him. But Light did not object to the idea since it was a suggestion from a companion of his. Suddenly, a group of people in hoods cut the line, catching the interest of the three. The one in front was small and well-trained, while the other two were less trained than the first. People behind them were discussing what they should do after people had cut in front of them, but they didn't want to make a wrong move in case that they were of another race. Light saw that the party that was cut in line was the same age as him and decided to do something about the situation, quickly telling the people with hoods to not jump in lines. They felt offended by such a small and seemingly weak boy telling them what to do, and asked Light if he knew who he was talking to. Light gave a remark about how he was supposed to know who they were when they had hoods on, Gold agreeing heartily, only to make the strange man angrier. Nimumu cut in to tell him to stop being stupid and to go to the back of the line, and everyone around them joined in to yell and complain about the hooded people. However, this man felt such a rage in him and tried to take out a weapon that was covered with a rag. A person next to him told the angry man to calm down as it wasn't the right time to use the item. Gritting his teeth, he stomped away with the other hooded people, and everyone praised Light and the other two for their display of courage. The party that was cut in front of walked up to them and thanked them for their help. One of the members asked Gold if his armor was real, since everyone else was likely curious about it too. The knight was about to answer the question until Nimumu cut him off and said that it was fake and would be unreliable and inefficient otherwise if it was real, especially with the many attacks from bandits who want the armor. Light knew of the truth about the armor being made of mostly real gold, but the lie would be best for them to get people to remember them in a positive light. The boy who seemed to be the leader of the party asked if it was their first time entering a dungeon, considering their lack of camping equipment. Light explained that they were only there to check the place out, and thanked the boy for the information as the dwarf at the gate called out for the next party, meaning that it was an early farewell to the two groups. Light and the others wondered if they should let it be known about the item boxes they had, but decided to think about it once they were inside of the dungeon. Nimumu asked what the dungeons were since all of them held so much variety, but Light knew there was too much mystery in it and it would only be understood once they found the heart of the dungeon core. Even Eri, the one who understood magic the most, didn't know what a dungeon core was. There were hints about dungeon cores in the myth of the world's creation. At first, the world was covered in black, before a goddess shone her light and created the lands and 9 races. When the vortex was divided, it formed an evil god who loved the goddess, only to be stuck beneath her creation. He would use the holes, which were known as dungeons, to make his own monsters to release onto the land and try to reach the goddess. The 9 races would fight the monsters to protect the goddess, and the battle continues even now. At least, that's how the myth goes. The monsters were stronger at night and went underground, because the evil god was down there, and the cores were supposedly fragments of this god that absorbed energy from the stars and magic and created dungeons. It spawned materials, treasures, monster spawners, and even different kinds of environments. After some time of walking through the dark cave, light was seen and the group entered a place that seemed like a whole different world compared to the surface. On the Dagas dungeon first floor, there was a group of people walking through the forest while the sky was starting to turn dark. This group was the same group of hooded people that Light and the others had run into and had reprimanded for cutting in line. One of the members noticed how it was almost evening, as another was disappointed by how much their plans had been disrupted due to entering the dungeon late. They were still in the middle of the first floor of the dungeon, all because they were deservedly pushed back in line by Light and the others. A growl was heard in the close distance as the 3 hooded people realized they were surrounded by monsters, and needed to take care of them as soon as they could to continue trying to set out their plan. Boar-like creatures charged toward the group of hooded people before the one carrying a large obscured weapon had pulled it out, and started to slice away at the monsters. He was in a rage, still upset about the scene with Light and the others and how they told them not to cut in line. Every one of the monsters was being decapitated left and right as the man yelled in anger indirectly at the people he was angry at, not paying much attention to the surrounding monsters since they were no match for him. The angry man leaped into the air and stabbed his sword into the ground, announcing to himself his own introduction of being one of the strongest white knights in the Elf Kingdom, the youngest to be recruited and inheritant of the blood of the master's blood, Kaito. Kaito checked his status and scoffed at his lack of rising level, disappointed that it would not increase with the level of opponents that he had just fought. Another one of the hooded people walked toward Kaito and told the man to calm down as they were aiming for the trolls on the 3rd floor of the dungeon, and should just ignore the rest of the monsters for the first few floors. Kaito grumbled and told the other elf, Yanaku, that there was no way for him to not panic about the fact that he might already have reached his growth limit, and he would have to stay at level 1500, despite having the blood of the master. Yanaku explained that there was nothing to be sad about since he was already stronger than the average elf, but Kaito still wasn't satisfied with the current level he was at. and believed that he would become a hero and be blessed by the goddess if he surpassed such a level, so he could deal with past people who made a fool out of him. The elf with half glasses said that he understood how Kaito felt, and dramatically talked about his own past and that he was there to be of help to Kaito. The angry elf told Yanaku to just finish his research and help him level up already, causing Yanaku to don an evil grin and talk about how he was going to do anything to continue his research, since the two of them held the same goal. Kaito scoffed and wondered why he was working with a dark elf, quickly reminding himself that this was a trial bestowed upon him by the goddess, and that he would be able to kill the people he wanted once he was recognized as a hero. Meanwhile, Light, Nimumu, and Gold were easily flying through the dungeon, already on the 3rd floor of the place and having killed all of the trolls. The boy told the other two to collect the materials from the trolls, along with the golem's magic stones to have proof for reaching these floors, even if their resources were enough due to Light's unlimited gacha gift. Light realized how dirty they had all gotten, and said that they needed to head back up, causing Nimumu to get excited to the idea of helping wash Light, until Gold teased the girl. The three of them had set off on their way back up to the surface, arriving on the 1st floor once more while they flew through the sky. After a while of flying, Light noticed the nice group of people that they had met earlier when in line to the dungeon, and realized that they were getting surrounded by goblins. Nimumu said that it was not worth their time, and Gold said that the group was unlikely to lose the battle. But Light explained that the group was too focused on what was in front of them. A snake slithered through the grass and charged at the girl, while the three guys in front were celebrating their win against the goblins, only to turn around and realize that Light and the others were right behind them. The boy told the group that they should pay attention to what's behind them and gestured toward the snake being crushed by its throat. It was a bush snake, which would have paralyzed the girl Maya, making her unable to move for a while if it had bit her. The whole group thanked Light, but their moment was interrupted by wolves running out of the forest. Everyone started to worry and run away, but the wolves were not there to attack. They were running away as well. And what were they running away from? Bursting out from behind the trees, a four-scythe mantis appears. The mantis roared, and the leader of the other group, Irio, explained that the monster was a rare one that only appeared once every 30 years. Irio suggested that they should all run away since the mantis was a level 500 monster, but it immediately started crawling at high speed toward everyone. The other group was ready to run away, but before they did, Light asked if that meant he and his group were free to kill it. Irio continued to beg them that they needed to run, but Light was confident that his group would be fine and stood tall as they looked up at the towering mantis. Gold slashed away at the mantis, but it had blocked all of his attacks and stood unscathed. Light decided to try and use a fire arrow, but it was easily deflected as well. Irio continued to stare in fear, explaining how the four-scythe mantis's blades had high magic resistance and were extremely sharp and that their group may need to help. The Golden Knight told them that there was nothing to worry about and started to talk about how shields were not just for defense. Right as the mantis was about to attack Gold until he deflected it swiftly and caused its blade to shatter. It seemed as if this entire battle was now a presentation for the other group, as Gold continued to explain how to fight a monster such as the mantis by using intelligence, cutting off more of its limbs. It was now Light's turn, and he summoned many more fire arrows all sent toward the monster, causing Maya to stare with awe at the boy's power. Every arrow gathered together in one spot and connected with the mantis, burning off one of its blades. The large monster quickly tried to make its escape, impressing Light, until he used another spell and summoned a wall of fire to stop the mantis from going anywhere. It suddenly sprouted wings and started to try and fly away from the battle. But Nimumu was already one step ahead and leaped into the air, dicing the monster into pieces with a glare. She landed gracefully and Gold sighed from what she had done, offending her until the knight had explained that she had cut all of the valuable parts of the monster, which meant that they couldn't sell it anymore. Nimumu was on her knees in apology to Light, but he forgave her easily. Irio, Maya, and the others were staring in awe and wondered who the three really were. The battle was over and Irio and his group praised the three for their actions for taking on such a large beast so easily. Irio asked Light and the others if they were famous A-rank adventurers, quickly correcting himself and believing that they could even be S-rank. Light dismissed Irio's words of awe and just casually explained that they had just registered as adventurers, and that made them currently F-ranks. Gold told Light that they could talk later and should collect the magic stones, but the boy said that they needed to clean up the mess made by Nimumu. Irio's group decided to give a hand, and Maya summoned a ball of water for Gold and everyone else to wash their hands in. Clean water was very precious inside of a dungeon, but it was great that there was someone who was able to use their mana to create pure water, just for everyone to simply wash their hands. Light could feel this group's sincerity as adventurers, and thanked them for their help. Maya walked up to Light and apologized for her late gratitude for saving her from the bush snake, giving an enthusiastic thanks until she bit her tongue in the process, which she was extremely flustered and embarrassed about. Gold told Light that they should move soon, in case there were other monsters, but Irio suggested that they should come with them to their camp nearby since the sun was going down and it would be dangerous for Light and the others to move around at night. Irio wanted to repay them for helping with the hooded people, and for what had just happened, and Maya herself had questions related to mages for Light to answer. The boy decided to accept their kindness and followed them to their camp, where they would eat and rest for the night and chat about their lives. Once they dug in, Maya learned that Light's parents were supposedly both mages and believed that was why he was so talented. Light complimented the girl as well for her own power at her age, but she dismissed his words after comparing her power with his, since she couldn't even use tactic-grade spells or do them chantless. Irio ate his food and asked his sister how much of a difference all magic had, causing the girl to whip her head and yell at her brother about it. Magic had 3 classes in total: combat grade, tactic grade, and strategy grade. Combat grade usually meant things like elemental arrows and such when mages were fighting alone. Tactic grade, such as the firewall that Light made, was used for enlarging the radius. And finally, strategy grade, which includes things such as meteors, tsunamis, earthquakes, and more that affected the world, requiring many mages to chant together and summon. Being able to use tactic-grade magic was proof of being a first class, and races such as dragon newts, dark elves, and demons were able to pass such a test, while humans were unable to climb that wall. Maya was both impressed but envious of Light's power in doing it all so easily without chanting, believing that they were witnessing a legend being carved into history. Nimumu stood up and laughed proudly, saying that Maya had good eyes for being able to understand the power of Light. Banter had occurred between Nimumu and Gold, causing Irio and Light to apologize to each other for the noise. Irio himself agreed that his sister was talented, since she had gotten a recommendation from the principality to enter their magic school. Light's eyes held interest when he asked about the principality, if it was the joint nation supported by all 9 races. Irio confirmed and explained that the principality's magic school was said to be the best place for those pursuing magic. Gold asked why they couldn't get into the school already, but Irio admitted that their parents had died and that they didn't have the income to pay for the tuition or even live on their own. This had led the 2 siblings to meet up with their childhood friends and work as adventurers for the time being until they would earn enough money, which would allow Maya to go to the magic school. Maya spoke and said that she was happy just being with everyone, begging her brother that she didn't want him to do anything reckless, to which Irio reassured her that he would. Light complimented the girl once again and said that she would reach her goal, but she thought that he was only flattering her. Light insisted, knowing that this is actually what he thought, since it was rare for a human to be able to use magic anyway. Even if Light were level 9,999, he could only use magic because of his cards, unlike Maya, who actually had potential due to her real abilities. The girl thanked Light for his words, and Irio proceeded to ask him about why he decided to become an adventurer. Light made up a lie and said that his parents died in a fire. Nimumu continuing by saying that the boy had gotten a heavy burn from said fire and was looking for a potion that could heal it. One of the members in Irio's group jumped into the conversation and asked if Gold and Nimumu were lovers, but this caused Nimumu to get angry and for Gold to laugh and agree with Nimumu that they would never get together. Kimura tried to ask if they had a chance with Nimumu, but she bluntly refused and said that she only liked Light. Maya staring in awe at the idea of an age gap love. Everyone continued the banter for the rest of the night, before they would have to sleep for the next day. Meanwhile, on the 3rd floor, Yanaku and Kaito were there looking for materials from trolls. Kaito asked how long he was going to be there hunting trolls, but the Dark Elf reassured the elf that the research was about breaking the limits of races, and that they were going to advance toward their next material soon. A human for their experiments. It had been 2 weeks since Light and the others had went into the dungeon, and now it was time for them to go back. The path to the entrance was crowded, meaning it would take a bit of time before the 3 could go back inside. People around had noticed them and recognized who they were as the party who was rumored to have defeated the Forsyth Mantis, being known as the Dark Clown Mask Party. Nimumu was surprised that there was already a name made for their party, and Light was excited to know that they were starting to stand out. Irio and his group had walked up and greeted the 3 after not having seen each other for so long. They had a gift of appreciation for Light and gave him a medicine for his supposed burn wound. Light was silent for a moment before thanking Maya for the gift and taking out something in return for the girl. A bracelet that would provide the user a small miracle when wishing strongly upon it. He insisted that she should take it, and Maya took it with gratitude. putting it on and admiring it before she turned around and thanked Light with a bright smile. Nimumu was jealous that she didn't get a gift from Light, but Gold told her to stop or else she would embarrass the boy. Once the three entered the dungeon, they immediately went on their flight through the air. Nimumu asked Light if it was truly okay for him to give such an item for a low-grade medicine. Light agreed that it wasn't a good trade, but he was happy that she cared for him. Once the group arrived on the 5th floor of the dungeon, a snowfield, Light told Nimumu and Gold that he was going to leave the Yetis to them, while the boy himself would head back to the abyss. He took out a card and teleported out of the dungeon, knowing that he was safe to do so on the 5th floor of the dungeon due to its size. Everyone was there to greet Light as he had finally come back after not being there for such a long time. Mei brought some tea for the boy, as Light explained what had happened during the journey, and how he met some nice people, making Mei happy about the news. Eri walked in and told Light about there being progress in Sasha's revenge plan, and how it would be ready in 10 days. The boy praised Eri for her work and told her to advance with the preparations while Mei would manage the abyss and Aoyuki would take care of the forest. Nazuna ran in excitedly to be put to a task, but Light hesitated since she was a person who didn't think before acting, and decided to just let her protect the abyss from strong enemies. She agreed and excitedly told Eri to go finish the preparations, causing the blonde witch to scoff. As they left, Light continued to sit there while drinking his tea, excitement in his eyes as he wondered how Sasha's face would look when in despair. In the Doggus dungeon 3rd floor, there were 2 men who sat by the fire chatting with each other. They were night guards for the time being, and one of the men, Subalon, asked Gilbert if he knew anything about the Dark Clown Mask Party. He did not, which made Subalon explain that they were the people who have reached the 5th floor within days, as well as defeated a Forsyth Mantis with just the 3 of them, and used tactic-grade magic without chanting. Gilbert was shocked and in disbelief, but Subalon insisted that it was true because of witnesses. It was too good to be true, as Gilbert wondered if the human leader of the group was a reincarnation of the hero or some legend. Subalon hoped that this would mean there would be a change in the world for humans to start being respected. After their moment, Subalon walked off and said that he was going to use the bathroom. However, when he would walk back, he would stumble upon a horrifying sight. Kaito was standing over his friend's decapitated head, causing Subalon to stare in shock before he quickly composed himself and tried to think about what to do next. He knew that he couldn't do anything against an elf, so he decided that he was going to run away and report the situation to the guild. Gritting his teeth, Subalon used a smokescreen and tried to sprint away into the swamp, thinking that his plan had succeeded, until something had hit him and sent him to the ground. He was in disbelief until the man was struck unconscious by Yanaku, who was disappointed by the whole situation of Kaito trying to kill everyone. The elf scoffed and said that humans were too annoying not to kill, and Yanaku agreed and would teach humans a lesson with his experiments, excited to gather more materials and replacements within the dungeon. Meanwhile, Maya was staring at the bracelet that Light had given her with a grin, and the others started to tease her about her feelings. The girl tried to complain, but they dismissed her and continued thinking about how they might be able to meet Light again in the next floor, making Maya blush even more. She tried to explain that she only admired the boy as a mage, and threatened to not give the group any more water or support if they kept teasing her, walking away with a grumble as the others tried to catch up, while apologizing. Light and the others had brought back their loot from the dungeon and gave it to a woman at a shop. She enthusiastically thanked the group for their next big haul of Yeti magic stones from the 5th floor, grabbing handfuls of the stones with a look of joy. The woman asked if the boy would want some food or sake, but Light said that he was fine and that she should count the magic stones they collected. Gold and Nimumu stared with an unamused look as they knew that the woman had such a change of attitude compared to the first time they brought in their loot on the first day, remembering how she had accused them as frauds days ago and spat on them for their race. She flinched and quickly apologized for her behavior by bowing, telling Light that she would warn all staff to not make the same mistake again, and begged the boy to not tell anyone about the situation. They had even promoted the group from F ranks to D ranks, and pleaded for the 3 to not change where they would do their adventures, since they were bringing back such valuable items. Water stones were used to freeze items and for research, which meant they were in high demand, but it was already rare for people to reach the 5th floor where they were found. So it made sense as to why the people at the shop were so suspicious of the group when they brought back a huge amount of them during their first day. Nimumu demanded that they would rank them up more, but the woman explained that it was too early for them to have another rank up, and they would need another major achievement before they could do something about it. Light hummed and thought as the woman explained that there was a difficult quest being announced soon, catching the interest of the boy. Commotion that could be heard in the distance was a group of dwarves walking into the area holding up wanted posters, announcing that there was now an emergency quest in the name of the guild. In the dungeon, there were mysterious deaths of adventurers, which were soon identified to be murders. The group didn't know what their motives and goals were, but the group of murderers were targeting humans and were likely to start harming other races if left alone. Throwing all of the posters into the air, the dwarf told everyone that they would now put a bounty on this adventurer killer to protect everyone's safety inside the dungeon. There was no information on them, which would mean that the guild would pay people for any little information they would be able to get on them. Gaining the interest of the three, Light grabbed one of the posters and asked the woman if that was the quest she was talking about, to which she confirmed. They walked away and Nimumu asked Light if they were going to capture these killers, Gold responding for the boy. The knight said that it was lucky for them to get such a quest at a time like this, even if they needed to focus on their ranks. Light's face turned into a glare as he told the other two that he was not planning on letting these killers do whatever they wanted. When they were back at their room in the inn, the three started to discuss what their plan would be regarding the quest. They didn't have any information regarding the culprit, so Gold asked Light if he had anything from his gift that could help with identifying them. The boy did not have a clear answer himself about what cards his gift could produce, but he was sure that it wouldn't be able to provide him with something that would help identify the culprit. While they continued to chat, the ground started to rumble, as black energy seemed to have appeared in the room and warp the reality around it. Everyone got ready to fight whatever would come out of it, but instead, someone fell out of it. A familiar face, in fact. Light caught the person only to realize that it was an injured Maya as he stared in confusion and concern. The bracelet that he had given her started to glow before it broke apart and fell to the ground. The girl was barely conscious as she choked out the words of having to tell him. But Light was too focused on trying to get Maya into a bed and giving her first aid. Light noticed that the bracelet he gave her was broken and wondered if her small miracle had activated and brought her to him. A few hours ago on the Dagas dungeon first floor, Irio and his group were shocked to hear about an adventurer murderer. They were told by another person that the culprit would make their move on the second floor, and recommended that the group leave as soon as possible. As the others walked away, Maya looked up at her brother in fear and said that there was likely an elite mage amongst the killers, meaning that they wouldn't even be a match against these people. Irio told the others that they should listen to the warning and turn back, even if it would be a waste to return now. The sun was setting, which meant that they would have to hurry up in their escape due to it being more dangerous at night. They had tried to move away from the entrance of the second floor to lower their risk of bumping into the killers, but the group did not expect to not make as much progress as they planned to. Everyone started to talk with one another about what their next move should be, until suddenly hooded people had walked up to them and asked them what they were doing there, shocking the group from their presence. Yanaku laughed and asked if they ran into trouble, but Irio explained that they were exhausted and needed to stop for a second. Maya grabbed at her brother's clothes and said that they should possibly warn the hooded people about the killers. Irio told them about the rumors that had been spreading around, and Kaito nodded in understanding, explaining that they were looking for prey and noticed Irio's group, not expecting the guild to have taken action so quickly. Yanaku admitted that they would have put more effort into doing things quietly if they knew that the guild was actually going to do something about them, causing Irio and the others to be even more confused, until the Dark Elf gave a maniacal laugh and called them slow to notice. Everyone felt fear course through their bodies as Kaito pulled out his sword, ready to start killing them. Irio was frozen for a moment, his body shaking, until he pulled out his sword and told his sister to run away. The other two had pulled out their shields and weapons, telling Maya that she should listen to her brother while they would buy some time. Kaito scoffed at the scene and charged forward to slice at Irio first, while Maya screamed in fear and horror. A large gash was sliced through Irio's gut as he grunted in pain, blood spilling out of the wound. Maya cried for her brother while he would fall to the ground as the other two called out for him until Kaito came forward again to slash at them, the wind pressure being enough to injure them severely. It was clear that the difference in levels was too high between their group and Kaito. Yanaku desperately told Kaito to wait and not to kill them, but was interrupted by Wardy getting up and standing up tall and proud, telling Maya once again to run. Kimura laughed and said that it was the first time he had heard Wardy shout like that, starting to get up himself despite bleeding hard, and saying that they couldn't lose to the elf. Maya cried out for them as Kaito scoffed in annoyance and cut their bodies in half with one slice, causing the tops of their bodies to fall to the ground with a thump and leaving them dead. Yanaku stared with a mouth agape as he begged Kaito to stop killing all of them, since there wouldn't be any test subjects left if he killed them all. But the blonde elf reminded him that he was going to kill anyone who made futile struggles. The dark elf confirmed that they agreed on it, but explained that Kaito's temper was a bit short. However, Kaito tried to reassure that it was fine since there was still one left alive. Maya sat there frozen and silent with fear, still crying, while Yanaku sighed and said that while it was precious material to have a human mage, More young materials were always welcome. The elf asked if he could have a bit of fun before they would continue the experiments, confusing Yanaku before Kaito clarified that he had some pent-up feelings that he wanted to release on the girl. The dark elf shrugged and said that she didn't seem to desire it, but he didn't care what Kaito did as long as he didn't kill the girl, and told him to call him when he was finished. He walked up to the girl, but Maya glared with fear in her eyes as she begged for the elf to go away, confusing him as he stopped in place and told the girl that he was the future legendary hero. Kaito believed that human girls thought of it as an honor and a dream to be embraced by an elf male, so he scratched his head in confusion as to why Maya was so afraid and trying to escape. He told the girl to stop being so reserved and beg for him with tears of joy. But Kaito would be interrupted by her brother getting up, still barely alive. Irio choked out words of telling Maya to run away again as the elf would turn around in confusion and anger. The boy looked at his dead friends and grit his teeth, struggling to stand on his arms and leaning on his sword while he panted for breath. Yanaku was impressed with the life force of Irio and told Kaito to capture him without killing him as he would become great material. Irio knew that he was likely to die with the wounds that he had, but his only priority was making sure that his sister was okay, glancing up with a warm smile at his sister, who was crying out for him. His soft eyes told the girl that he wanted her to run away, and that was what she did. Maya continued to cry as she made a break for it, Kaito turning around and ready to chase after her as Irio charged forward to slash at the elf. Kaito easily deflected it, upset to be interrupted, but Irio did not back down, which impressed the dark elf even more as he reminded Kaito to not kill him. The blonde elf looked forward with a bored and annoyed look as Irio muttered words to himself, the lesson that Gold had taught them from 2 weeks earlier. As Irio recited Gold's teachings, it made the enemy ignore him for a moment and turn his head away and avert his eyes, making an opening for Irio to throw his sword toward Kaito. Due to the difference in level, it wouldn't have mattered even if it hit, but thanks to Kaito ignoring Irio and focusing on dodging the attack without thinking, the boy was able to charge forward and swing his arm, striking the shield against the elf's face. Irio was able to use this chance to perform this attack against Kaito even if he had dealt 0 damage in the end. The elf fell to the ground with a shocked look, silent for just that moment as he stared blankly at Irio, the level 20 teenager on his last breaths who had made Kaito, the level 1500 elf, fall to the ground despite the difference in level. He stood over Kaito and gave a smug grin, saying that was what he deserved, believing that he won just for that one action. Irio kept his grin as Kaito grit his teeth, now enraged from the situation as he called the boy inferior once again. In seconds, a summoned magic sword was pierced through Irio's gut, sending him flying into the air as he coughed for blood before he had fallen to the ground, likely now dead. Kaito was about to do more harm to the child until Yanaku stopped him and said that he did more than enough, and should just go and catch the girl who was running away, because if she were to get out alive, information about them would be spread everywhere. Maya continued to run as fast as she could, breathing heavily from the exhaustion of crying and running. She needed to tell someone about the adventurer murderers. She needed to stay alive since everyone had bought her time. The girl believed that if she was fast enough, she might be able to make it out of the dungeon. However, that was not the case. Magical swords came flying toward her and stopped the girl in her tracks as she screamed in surprise and fell to the ground. Kaito flew in on one of the blades, and admitted that her and her brother really gave him a run for his money, telling Maya that he was going to teach her a proper attitude. She stared up in horror as Kaito looked proud by her surprise, explaining that the sword he held was a phantom-grade sword, once used by a master, the Grandius. It could freely create clones of itself and can fly when one would ride on it. Maya grit her teeth knowing that she couldn't give up when everyone had given their lives for her to run away, which meant that she would also give her all to tell everyone about the murderers. Standing up, Maya had grabbed her staff and started to chant for blades of ice to manifest around her, and sent them toward the elf as a distraction while she would continue running. Kaito easily sliced through them and saw the situation as annoying from the goose chase. She kept running away as he followed close behind while she would send more and more icicles toward him. But Kaito decided that he had had enough and sent the blade he was standing on toward Maya and slashed through her leg to immobilize her. Maya fell to the ground, but she was still determined to get out and tell someone. Kaito walked up to her and told her to forget about the idea of running away, and to just give herself to him for the sake of the future hero instead of being so stubborn. Maya held a glare and finally spoke, telling the elf that he wasn't a hero or a legend. He was a coward who loved bullying the weak, who was so far from a hero that he was nothing more than just a loser. Kaito felt something snap within him, starting to remember all the people back in the Elf Kingdom who had told him the exact same things and had looked down on him. He was brought back to reality and yelled at Maya to shut up, summoning many magical blades in a rage with the full intent of killing her at that point. The girl stared above her with fear in her eyes as she realized that she was about to die, but she didn't want that to happen. Not yet. Not when everyone else had sacrificed themselves. She had to tell Light she couldn't die until she told him. And in seconds, a black void had appeared